Okay, folks, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to call the Middleton Plan Commission meeting for Tuesday, July 11th, 2017 to order. And the first order is, let's have a roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Paulson?
Here.
Hubbard?
Here.
Farrar?
Yeah.
Sellers? Here. Paulson?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
And Dorman?
Here.
All right. Okay, the next one is the approval of the minutes.
Move approval. Second.
Any discussion? Questions or concerns? Okay, then if there are no, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the minutes are passed. And the next item on the agenda is the specific implementation plan modification for Seco Foods expansion 1845 Deming Way, Land Commission 2524. So I would ask who is going to?
Abby did this.
Abby?
Yep, I can
All right.
go over the staff comments briefly, and it looks like someone is ready to make a presentation as well.
Okay.
This is a request for approval for about 20,000 additional square feet of warehouse and office at the Seco Foods building on
Abby, could you
Deming Way.
move the microphone close to you, please?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, or you can do it. Thank you.
The parking as proposed, it's 24 additional stalls. We think that that should accommodate the additional expected employees of the business, as well as any vehicles for the business. We would recommend actually removing one of those parking stalls to create a canopy tree island, as is recommended in our parking specifications ordinance, to break up the linear row of 12 parking stalls. The lighting and the landscaping and the signage, we think that all three of those are appropriate. They appear to meet the intent of our ordinance. One issue came up today related to preservation of ensuring that construction practices are undertaken to ensure that trees on adjacent properties are not harmed. So we want to make sure that that we're careful of that, and any recommendation should be contingent on staff reviewing the construction plans that they have to preserve the trees on adjacent properties. We also know that the stormwater, I believe, is still being reviewed, so that has to meet our ordinance and needs to get approval from our staff. But otherwise, our recommendation is for approval for this one.
Okay, any questions for Abby?
Abby,
Okay,
how do
then.
you know whether you're going to endanger that oak savanna? I ask because I know this is, at least a while, years ago, this used to be precious territory to the extent that the Full Compass people moved out of town. And, this is right to the lot line.
I think we would want our city forester to look at it. I think that that's probably the only person we have on staff who'd be qualified to determine if trees are being preserved in an appropriate manner.
That's correct.
Dennis, when you say the oak savanna, you mean on the parcel to the east?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, that was my concern too, is that the building comes, well, I can't see here, but it looks like only 5 feet from the lot line, and there's a parking lot on the adjacent parcel that's pretty close. So if you look at the landscape plan and the slopes here, there is some concern about where the rainwater would go relative to that oak savanna. I know there's a rain garden proposed on the southeast side.
Right. That's right.
That was the only concern. The other question is, when you say remove a stall to put in a canopy, which on the south, the new parking lot on the south side?
Yep.
Which lot is that? Are you talking about? That's my question.
The new proposed parking lot that's on the south side, our ordinance requires one tree island per 12 linear parking stalls. And at first glance, I thought, well, that's kind of for screening purposes, and it's not on the street side. But then when Eileen and I talked about it, we thought, well, because it's visible from the trail, that really would be nice to have that tree island.
you're kind of thinking where the 8 is on the plan, that circle 8 or whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's kind of center of that island?
Yep.
Center of that parking? That's
Well,
kind of-
actually, it would be on the, I mean, I suppose we could swap it if we wanted it closer to the property line.
Well,
could work
I'm
with-
just, I didn't know I know that you wanted one, I just was.
Yeah, I was thinking the row that's the long, I mean, for our ordinance.
Oh, the longer road.
the
The
street
longer
side?
row, yeah. No, the northern part of the southern parking lot, so right up against the south side
Where
of the
the
building.
16 is then, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, right about
Somewhere,
there.
somewhere
Yeah.
in there. Okay, cool.
But I suppose if we wanted it on the, closer to the southern lot line, we could give that direction.
So how about you would like to see the presentation?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Maybe they can address some of the.
Okay, guys, you're here, so, go for it.
Got a big group.
I'm
You, you need to use the microphone for the recording.
I'm Ray Santa, and along with my father and my brother, we started Seiko Foods about 44 years ago. And we've been in our current building, we built it in, started in '94 and we moved in 95, so we've been in that current location for 22 years. But prior to that, we've always had a Middleton address going back to the 70s. So we've been part of Middleton for a long, long time. And I think this commitment we're doing now, we want to be part of Middleton for a long, long time to come. But in the interim, what we've done is we've done the succession planning with our company, and so we have actually my partner is out of town on another commitment, but much younger. So we are still basically a family business, and we want to continue that for a long time. And we're committed to Middleton, and so we're really excited about this project and making Seiko Foods a much bigger part of Middleton than it has been. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Montalbano. I'm the architect that's helping out with the project. As I think I heard some of you discuss earlier, the existing building is a really nice example of, I would say, mid-20th century Bauhaus design. It was designed by a student of East Vanderohe. And so it's a really nice building. It has some things that are dated in terms of construction, energy efficiency, and so forth. So it has been a challenge to put an addition on the building. We're trying to keep its character and have the addition be more complementary to it. Maybe I don't know if I can swivel this around, maybe I can go through a couple of.
You can take it out.
Oh, I can? Oh, okay. Okay. This is the existing building. There's a couple of things that identify this style. One is it's the steel roof structure is expressed on the exterior. It's a very smooth concrete block, which is laid up in a stacked bond, so that it's not to be confused with an actual structural bearing wall. It's more like a screen wall. And we're planning on using that same block with the same color as a base for the office portion of the building. The other thing that we've done is to take the warehouse and push it to the north so that the exterior walls of the warehouse do not line up with the existing building to try to differentiate it from that existing building, and drop the roof. We don't need the same interior ceiling height in the warehouse as what's in the existing building. So by lowering the roof, we're trying to keep this part of the building showing more from the belt line. And also, these are precast insulated concrete wall panels, which are more energy efficient than the block. And we'll be painting the lower base of the warehouse the same color as this block, burnished block, with a lighter shade of the same color above that. And then the top portion would be white to kind of match the white cap of the existing building. So we're taking some elements, trying to keep some common, some things common with the existing building while differentiating it from the existing.
That's correct.
How many feet from the east side of the new building to the property line? I realize that the adjacent use is also industrial, right? And that building's set back, and the only thing that's close is parking lot.
Do you have that dimension on your plan, Ron, or?
I believe I do. Do you have the same plan?
I mean, I'm also trying to see if staff.
It looks like it's a little smaller than the parking lot,
Yeah.
right? So assuming those parking lots are
Parking stalls.
parking stalls.
Yeah, so it's
Sorry, not parking.
so it's probably
I would say
8
it's
or 10
probably
feet.
about 15 feet, something like that.
Well,
Maybe.
it's,
Somewhere between 10 and 15 feet. I don't have the dimensions.
Question for
cited.
Abby or Mark. Has the fire officer seen this?
Oh, okay. That's right. That's what happens when our office manager is out
Right.
of town.
Typically, they do.
I think, I know that they received the plans. What I don't know is if they wrote in the staff comments, if they had any recommendations. I looked at the staff comments from, for this project, and they were all, it was all boilerplate language. There were not any policy issues that were raised. But what I want to make 100% sure of is that they put any fire comments in at all.
And if they didn't, a lot of times they'll do an individual letter.
Yeah.
But we also have a procedure where before a building permit is granted or a zoning permit, they have to sign off on it, so.
I mean, you see, it's the south edge is difficult to get around, the north edge is difficult to around, and the whole of the eastern edge is just this 8 feet, if we're correct. So I would.
It needs to be at least 10 feet as a requirement of the state building code.
Okay.
So I would say it's somewhere between 10 and 12 feet, I would think.
10 feet and accessible. Right?
No,
You've got-
you mean for fire department?
Yeah.
No.
All right, is it all
The building is totally sprinkled, and there would be fire department access on the south side and the north side.
and through the neighboring parking lot, presumably.
I'm not sure whether you consider that or not. We'd have to take a look at that.
The existing building is production facilities, right?
Yes.
And so this would then be expanding office and warehouse.
On the loading dock, as it is right now on Terrace South, sometimes the semis block all the way across, and it's only listed as possible future loading dock, so that's not part of this plan now, or?
It's not part of this plan now, the additional loading dock on the west side. That's something that could be done in the future.
It's,
'Cause-
I drive that road, and those semis are there, and people go around on the other side of the road, and it's a safe situation, I know.
The current loading zone is on the north side of Terrace.
It's on
Right, so if you're
Terrace.
driving on Terrace, you see those 3 big loading zones.
Right, but the semis are backing in.
They're backing it.
And they're across both lanes of Terrace and going,
Oh, when they're loading, they extend out into the.
or they're backing in and
They're
when they're waiting.
trying to get in. Okay.
I have the staff comments from the fire department. Norm Arndt prepared some comments. He said that a separate approval letter from the fire department would be required, and a copy needs to be submitted to our office before we would issue a building permit. Sprinkler system and alarm system need to be tied into the existing system. Horn strobes are required in all office and new admin spaces. Plans need to be reviewed by the fire department once developed. Knox box is required, and if access is being impacted, then he needs to have a meeting with the applicant to discuss it.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, this is for a specific SIP modification. So need a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve contingent on resolution of staff recommendations dated 6/30/17 on the addition of a canopy tree island in the rear parking lot, and contingent on staff approval of construction plans to preserve trees on the adjacent property. Is that
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? And this includes also the comments from the fire department
In stormwater.
and
all staff
and the
recommendations.
stormwater. Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay.
And it's back to the same thing, loading dock. Why is it that it's not being addressed now? And it says possible, because you would think at this time,
Yeah.
when all the construction's going on, it might make the most sense to do it now?
Well, basically, because we, with hours of loading dock, we basically only load from 6 a.m. to 2. And we have now access with personnel that we can now load second shift also. So when we get into needing additional time, we'll schedule trucks. We'll be able to schedule trucks in at later times if we need to. We really don't feel that I wanted to add on another loading dock at this time. That loading dock area that you mentioned about how the trucks, when we built that building when Terrace Avenue dead ended at full compass. And when you added extended Terrace Avenue, we worked with the city to develop that turn where the trucks come in from. They'll come up off 14th and then turn on Terrace, and then they come in that loop and then they come up and then back in. So that's the only way we could get them in. So that whole system was designed along with the city when Terrace Avenue was extended. But the trucks do not extend out onto Terrace Avenue. They're well back when they're actually loading. It's only they come a loop, they come across and then back in. And then when they pull out, they go back to Deming, so they do that turn and going back. And so they're coming out a little slow, but you're right, the trucks do block it occasionally, but it's never for huge amounts of time. It's, they turn up and then they back down.
Yeah, I know sometimes I see it and the back doors are open and the truck is across the road. And it sounds,
what they'll do is, it depends on the driver. Sometimes they'll pull out a short ways, because the doors are open when they back in. So they'll go and they'll close the doors after it's loaded. Some drivers will close it when it's still well on our property. Some will start out. Some will go all the way up to the stop sign and then stop up there and close the doors. We don't have any set procedure for telling them where they can close the doors, but sometimes they will stop like that. But most of the time when they're blocking the road, they pull up and up to the curb on the other side and then back in. And most drivers can do it on one maneuver. Sometimes you get one that takes 2 or 3. But
it sounds like there's going to be more deliveries and pickups. You said by adding
Well, yeah, by adding this, the purpose of this is the business is going to grow, yes. But even adding another truck dock actually is going to make it a little bit more awkward getting in. So that's why at this time I prefer to do it, just to try to manage it with the 2 docks that we have. And then as a future on the west side of the building to add a third one in if it becomes necessary down the road.
That wouldn't, if this were put in on the west side, it wouldn't replace the ones in the front.
No, it would not replace the ones, no. And it wouldn't be part of the new building anyway.
Okay, right.
It would be on the other side.
It's on the open. Okay.
Well, I'm wondering if it would address Councilwoman's concerns if we approve, with the exclusion of not approving the SIP, the modification for the west side loading dock. And then if you needed it, you could come back and seek approval. Would that address your concern, or are you satisfied with?
I'm satisfied with that. They would keep the loading dock as it is now.
The 2 on the north.
And if it need be, they would add another one anyway, so that they weren't going to eliminate the one that's that's in the front end. So.
And also they can talk to the drivers and tell them, there are some issues and be careful about it. So.
I don't think the drivers like to block them.
I know they don't.
But they have to anyway. Sometimes you get really good drivers and they're quick in and out. And there's been a few times where you have an inexperienced driver and you just close your eyes and wonder where did this guy come from? It must be very new. But most of the time they're pretty good at getting in and out. But we spent a lot of time designing that turnaround to make it as efficient as possible. Because prior to that, our parking lot was paved, well, pretty much to where all the way across where Terrace Avenue is. So they have a lot of room to.
But there's more traffic there with the fencing, and I know I go that way every day.
There's constantly cars going up.
More traffic than when it was designed. Okay.
Okay, any more discussion? Any more questions?
It's a good business and good to have in Middleton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good local business, family owned, so this is a good thing. So, okay, then if there are no more questions, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion for the SIP for the Seco Foods expansion is passed. So the next one is a request for tax mental finance district 3 assistance for Seco Foods 1845 Deming Way. So you want okay, Abby.
So this is a request from Seco for $315,000 in developer finance TIF assistance to support extraordinary costs related to the soil conditions, construction quality, and site access. We think that the increment that's projected from this project over the life of the TIF is right at about $315,000. If it falls short, obviously it's developer financed, and so the city would only provide the assistance based on the increment generated, but this is a request for 100% of the increment that's being generated from the project. And the staff recommendation is for approval of $315,000 in developer finance TIF.
Sorry.
Yes. Well, you had your hand. Okay, first Kurt and then Dennis.
Yeah.
Sure.
So normally in developer finance TIF, there's some interest payment. I'm assuming this doesn't generate enough increment to actually cover that.
Interest payment, that's correct. Yeah, in fact, initially they had identified, I think, about $600,000 in extraordinary costs. And so Eileen and Bill Burns, our finance director, and I worked with them over a couple of meetings to get the TIF requests down to a level that we could support.
Yes, Dennis.
Well, I don't know if this is a legitimate concern or not, but I sort of feel like the number 2 construction quality item. We're asked to. I mean, I have a feeling from the way this was presented, referring to Mies van der Rohe as an influence on this, that there's never been any intention to have a steel constructed building there, and that would go contrary to the entire design of it. So I don't know why we're footing the whole bill.
Actually, it's not the whole bill. So they had requested initially, I think, $380,000 to support the construction quality,
Right.
and that was one of the items that, Eileen and Bill and I talked with them over a couple of meetings, and we recommended that come down so that the city's not incentivizing the full amount for construction quality. I think that the applicant made the case in a couple of meetings that if this facility was located in a more industrial type setting, they wouldn't design the building to have the clear story windows and some of the other decorative accents that they've put on the building. They would, design like a metal prefab or something like that would be more common to see in the older industrial park area. And I think, when the building was initially constructed in its location, it was a different setting than it is today, and now we would want to see a higher quality of design than what we might see in the older business park area. So the applicants welcome to speak to that as well if they have other points that they'd like to make on that.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused as to what they're asking for then. They're not asking for 380?
No,
But they're getting only 315. That's the 100% of the TIF money for the remaining time of the TIF.
so I think what happened here is.
Okay, up there at the top.
Yeah, so they had submitted this request for assistance, which shows about $470,000 in costs. This was actually the second iteration. The first iteration was about over $600,000. The second iteration came in. I think that this is the one that's included in the packet. I did get a revised one, but not in time to include in the packet. So we asked them to revise it down to represent the amount that we would be recommending, which is a total of $315,000, and of that, $225,000 is for construction quality.
Okay.
I'll move approval of $315,000 in development finance TIP assistance for the project and recommend approval to the common council.
I'll second.
Okay, any more questions now? Do you guys want to add anything? Okay. Anyone else?
Nice sign.
Okay, all right. Well, if there are no more questions, I call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion for the TIF assistance for the Seco food is for $315 is passed. Okay, so the next one is a request for conditional use permit and specific implementation
Mayor?
plan. Yes?
There's a public hearing on the agenda.
Oh,
No, but he was going to the agenda.
okay, I apologize. So, okay, that was at actually 7:05, right? So, okay, I'm going to call the public hearing for request for conditional use permit for Madison Power Equipment, 2111 Eagle Drive. And anyone who would like to say anything? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anyone who wants to speak for the request for conditional use permit for Madison Power Equipment? Okay, if there are no one to speak, pardon me?
Is this the presentation that you're asking for?
Now, this is the public hearing on the conditional
Anything
use.
which you want to say? So you are the owner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead if you want to say anything. So,
I'm Nick Ashley. I'm the owner of Madison Power Equipment. Here seeking a permit to use the space at 2111 Eagle Drive.
it's about 250 square feet which you are asking there, and I think it looks good, right?
We are asking for 250 approximate square feet of landscaped area to showcase lawnmowers along Highway 14 underneath the ATC power lines.
Okay.
We talked to ATC, they don't have any problems with it, it's not going to extend 14 feet in the air. The lawnmowers will only be parked outside during normal business hours, they won't be stored overnight outside. Everything will be indoors and secure. It will not be a situation similar to Middleton Power Center where there's hundreds of lawnmowers outside. There would only be a handful during normal business hours, and then they would go indoors at the end of the day. Nothing would be stored outside.
And your neighbors are happy, right?
Our neighbors are happy about that.
Okay.
We actually did speak to the owner of 2 buildings to the north, and he didn't have any issues with it. Once we told him it wouldn't be a similar situation like that.
Okay, wonderful. Any questions for the gentleman?
I have one, I guess.
Okay.
I think it's wonderful that nobody objects to it, but shouldn't we have something that we're looking at that shows us the sign? That's not the sign. That's the sign location.
Can I just clarify, what's before us is conditional use because the building already exists, right? And it's just it's modifying the SIP to allow retail use as a conditional use. But then he's also asking for, he's not asking us to approve the outdoor sign, or is he?
It is.
I don't have an outdoor sign for approval at this point. It's still under development. I was just asking for permission to have this equipment placed outdoors.
But you know you would have to have the sign approved when you have it, right?
Yes, at this point, I have not yet moved forward on at least on the place. I was looking for a conditional use permit before committing to the space.
So the conditional use permit is for the use and the outdoor display. Okay.
Yes, David.
Could you speak to the first choice versus the second choice?
We identified 2 places on the property that would be suitable for our use for the placement of these items. The first choice would be along Highway 14 for the higher visibility aspect. The second choice would be along Eagle Drive directly in front of the space that's we're looking at leasing.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question for clarification about some language in your letter. It says up to 6 units would be placed outside, but we could make do with 2 units or 0 if necessary to gain approval. So units are the lawnmowers?
Correct.
So you would like to put 6, but you would be content with 0 if you had to get approval?
Correct.
So then what does the approval mean if you're going to have 0 out there?
I'm not asking you to approve for 0, but we can scrap that aspect of my request if there's a lot of concern about these lawnmowers being placed outside.
Okay. So you would have the business, you just wouldn't have anything outside? Okay.
Correct.
I got it. All right.
Any more questions? Okay, so then I'm going to close the, anybody else wants to speak? Otherwise, I'm going to close the public hearing part of the request for the conditional use permit for Middleton power equipment. Okay, yeah.
I wrote the staff comments. Maybe I can help clarify a little bit. So the public hearing was specific to the use of the building, of an existing building and premises.
Right.
So that's why the lack of a site plan is why I allowed that, I guess. But I think your packet should have an air photo and street view image, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't put one in the file.
Is this?
This thing?
Yeah, that's just those
That's all we have.
metal shed buildings.
Well, it's online, but it's not apparently in your packet, so I apologize. I did put an air photo and a street view image, and so apparently that didn't get in the packet, so I apologize for that. If you want, why don't I go grab that, and then you can...
Mark, do you want me to pass it around?
I don't think it's.
Wow.
Okay.
I looked it up on Google Maps.
So nice of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry it wasn't in the packet. I don't need to see it, obviously.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
It's just, you're only taking part of an existing building.
Correct.
Right. There's
4,800 square feet.
And
like Fastenal, are they in
It's the
there?
same building as that.
Okay, that's
And so because we didn't have details on the outdoor display area, I was recommending that staff have we be given the discretion to do that approval. If we are uncomfortable with it, we would bring it back here. If you would like to do design review approval before this commission, it's perfectly fine. Obviously, that's your right, your prerogative to do that. I also said that I didn't support the temporary staff placement of a temporary sign out there on a quasi-permanent basis. In hindsight, my staff comment should have said also staff approval of the sign with your permission. I didn't mean to say design approval of the signage as well. I got ahead of myself there, but basically the intent was to have the public hearing on the use, whether you support the use as described in the applicant's statement, and then allow staff to do final approval of the signage and outdoor display area unless you wish to have it here. That's how I intended to write.
Well, what Mark said, I'll move approval of the
Okay, we first, so the public hearing part is closed now, so now we move on to item number 4, request for conditional use permit and specific implementation plan modification for Middleton Power Equipment 211 Eagle Drive. Yes.
And I'll move approval of the cup and whatever other comments Mark had and staff approval for whatever we need to do there.
Display area and the signage.
Display area and the signage.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, any more questions? Dennis, you have any?
Is this within the sign code in terms of size?
I don't have those details yet. There's a location here saying where the sign would be roughly on the building, but it doesn't have dimensions. So that's why I said I got a little bit ahead of myself with that recommendation.
Which isn't part of this.
No.
He can only approve it if it's part of the code.
Exactly.
If it requires a variance of the code, it would come.
Yeah.
Well, I know
Yeah.
But you know, it's
Yeah.
like I said about some other things, you know, that's not what it says.
Yeah. Well,
It's okay, I understand what the
Yeah.
intent is, you know, but it's not what it says.
And we're talking about first choice site?
Correct. At least that's part of my motion.
Cindy, you have a question?
That's an off-site sign then, I mean, unless they own.
We're not talking about a sign, we're talking about the display area.
We are only approving the
This is
display.
the
area.
display area.
display
Yeah,
area
that's
is
the
on
only thing we are
premise.
approving.
And so would any signage. There's
No
nothing else.
signage.
Everything would be
Only-
on premise, just
Okay.
off building.
Sign has to be done later.
Yes, only the display area and then the option number 1.
Is this a portion of the building that's?
It's a portion of the building.
Just a portion.
Yeah. And
It's just a
This
path.
And what's closest to the display where the first choice is? What's on the end of the building?
That's
That's fast enough.
I guess the machines have bolts. So, somewhat related.
I mean, this would be the only retail in in those two buildings.
Yeah.
So,
We have approved similar requests.
Yes. So it's a minor part of the
Right.
total.
So is everybody happy? Okay, so I'm going to call any more questions, folks? Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to call the question for the approval as the motion made by Leaf and seconded by Kurt. And it includes all things that with the staff would make sure that it doesn't include design and any of those things. It's mainly the display thing. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion for the SIP conditional use permit for the power equipment is passed. Okay, so the next one is concept review for Trista mixed-use development including Middleton Market 7622 Lisa Lane.
That is staff comments for that.
Okay, all
Our
right,
consultant, our consultant put together just a concept plan, sketch, and it's dated 6/26/17. It was in the packet. We met with Robin a couple of times about it. What we were trying to do, talking with her, is put down on paper what we as staff were thinking in terms of this area. And she has agreed, I think, to most of them. In my staff comments, I worked with our planning consultant, to talk about what are some of the things that we still need to talk about in the future. And I think tonight, if we could talk through the proposal as she's willing to modify. She did not modify her plans that were submitted based on what she's willing to do, but I think if we could talk through it. The idea that we had as staff is to open that up with a street. We proposed a public street, and that's what's shown on the concept plan that was sketched. But I think Robin, is the applicant's going to propose a private street, almost at the same cross-section as we would be looking at. We have to talk about the details of the construction of it, because it would have a public easement, and it would open up the area for the market and retail, and also for the apartments. We think it would open it up and make people feel as if they can, come in there, park on the street, go to the market, or attend or go to visit somebody at the apartments, or parking in there for the apartments. We also had suggested maybe driving through in the area where we show pedestrian pass-through or vehicle pass-through on either side of the building, closest to Lisa Lane. You can see the pedestrian pass-through and then the vehicle pass-through. I think Robin can speak to that. I think she was hoping more for a pedestrian pass-through. We thought vehicular access might help open up the sites for as people come in to park either for the residential component or the retail. So those are some of the things. And there's still things to be talked about. Architectural standards is one. The elevation of the retail, stormwater. But those are things to be worked through.
Robin, you are up, so let's hear from you. Yes.
So we did meet with staff and do agree to most of the changes that proposed. It's become very evident that we needed to put a road to get staff support into the site and some council support. So we're willing to add the road. What we're asking for is actually that the road become private for two reasons. One is city engineers don't like the parking on the street the way that we're showing it on the staff plan, which we think actually enhances the site and allows easier access to the market. So as a public street, that would be a challenge. And two, we'd like the opportunity to slow down the traffic in there and be able to close it off a couple times a year, a tree lighting ceremony, a food truck festival. And so we would have that ability to do that, but that we would make it an easement road that would be a public easement for the road, and we would just maintain it as a road for access into the building. We're fine with putting the pedestrian walkthrough on the right-hand side of the site. We had already planned that. It just wasn't reflected in the plans that we presented. We do not want, we would prefer not to have the vehicle pass through on the left side, but maintain that as a pedestrian pass through and keep the retail as a smaller building on that side. You'll be happy to know we've been getting a lot of medical complimentary services inquiry for that retail. So what we're hoping is that we can get the plan approved as shown with staff comments with minor modifications as a concept approval, and then we can move on to actually, is it PID, right, is next?
GIP.
GIP is next. So we would come back for a public hearing and a GIP next month. I also have my architect here because we do have elevations if anyone wants to ask questions about what we're presenting in the elevations and the materials and how we're looking at the look and feel of the building.
Yes, Kurt, you had your hand up?
Oh, no.
Okay, David.
Just a point of clarification to start. On the concept diagram, it says extend the building.
Yeah, we don't want to.
You're saying you don't want to do that?
We don't, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We believe we're going to have a stormwater issue, and I still think that these stormwaters, talking to our stormwater engineer, are too small, and so we may end up needing that space. If we don't, we will use it as green space, but we definitely have stormwater with how close that water table is on the site.
Wendy, you had something?
So we're looking at this sketch, this one that you did not add.
It's both.
It overlays.
And asking.
But the road situation
The
is.
road situation is different, right? So she's agreeing that she would put a private street with a public way.
All right.
And also the pedestrian pass-throughs for the building and kind of the configuration potentially is shown.
Correct. The only thing that we don't like on the staff plan is the vehicle pass-through and the added square footage of the retail.
Can you tell me what you mean by market?
Yes, we're doing what you would call, it's not a new concept, it's very popular on the West Coast and the East Coast is coming to the Midwest, where you would have separate stands by separate vendors that would serve prepared food and food that you could take home to prepare yourself. So mostly established vendors. We've already started talking to a nano brewery that would brew and sell growlers. Fishmonger is talking about coming in and having some prepared fish, some completely cooked fish, some that you would buy to cook at home completely freestanding. And each vendor would be approved by us and have to complement, focusing on local, regional, and sustainable foods. And the retail portion then would also, on the other side, would support the medical use that you're looking for on the campus, and like I said, we're getting a lot of interest in that already.
And on this concept plan, where would that be serviced from?
The market, which part? The market?
The market, yes.
Yeah, the market would be serviced from the parking garage. The back end of the market would actually be loading docks, the far right-hand side.
Oh, the gray shaded area, right?
Correct,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
All right, sorry, I have a lot of questions, but last week I was actually at the Public Market Historic Third Ward in Milwaukee. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh yeah, my architect's across the street from there.
So, I mean, when I walked in, I saw it. I'm like, now that would be, that's kind of the concept you're looking for, right?
Correct.
So if you've never had, I have pictures on my phone. I took for you too. So, I know there's probably, this is pie in the sky, but just to the east, there's that, well, charitably low quality car storage lot,
Oh, yeah.
which would be an ideal location for the market in maybe an L-shaped format to front Parmenter. I don't know if you've approached them.
Yeah. We talked to them right away, and there's no interest in selling that site at all, as far as we can tell.
Which, that's a real shame, because
The upside is there, potentially that's an excellent expansion site for us, and we do look at some point. Right now, to throw money at it, to do it, we didn't need it,
So on this concept plan from Vanderwall, this street that they're saying public street, but you would say is a private street with an easement, it would have parallel parking on the west side, but horizontal parking on the east side, or?
No, it would not have parallel parking on the west side. It would only, and they may show it, we wouldn't do it there. We
Okay,
don't
they
do it.
showed that. So it'd just be parking on one side of the street
Correct,
on 180-degree horizontal.
correct. And there's two reasons for that. One, it was a great compromise for us to get vendors in, we could use that for vendor parking when we have outdoor events. And two, it really does allow access during regular days to be close to the market.
How wide would this street be then? Because
There's a draft.
I mean, what they're showing shows also two 10-foot travel lanes, an 18-foot parking lane, and another 8-foot parking lane.
Yeah, we would get rid of that 8-foot parking on the other side.
So it'd be 42 feet. I mean, this would become an issue because as designed, that street should be a through street all the way up to Airport, down to Donna?
Well,
No, it doesn't.
the owners of the property to the north don't want it to go through.
Right.
And don't have it. So the idea would be that it would go up to the edge of this site and then over to Laura Lane.
So it would exit to the left
Go
of
exit to the
Laura.
left.
We would remove the circular lane on the far right-hand side of the property, and it would just go into parking lot. So on the right-hand side of the market,
This would,
we would end that driveway around the corner of the building. And most of the traffic then would travel through, but this lane will end up being extension. I can name it after myself, it'd be Robin Drive, and then it would eventually connect over to Laura Lane. I get in trouble with my husband.
and is it, I'm curious what staff thinks about, because I mean, the concept plan, the plan for the corridor shows it almost straight. Admittedly, Zimbrick doesn't want it to go through yet, but that you would want from Century to Donna,
And this is
Concept plan takes it right the way through.
yeah.
Right, what's the status of this? It says draft on it.
It was approved by the city as a concept plan for the area to help guide it.
I think that, apart from a couple of questions about it, I think this is an ideal concept plan, and I'm glad to see that they've started it. That does question the public privateness of this road, right?
Yeah, I'm asking for it. I'm not sure you'll give it to me, but I'm asking for it mostly because we're worried about the parking. The city has assured us that we'd be able to get closure permits for the road for the few times we needed it.
Exactly.
But that parking there really adds to the market, and if we can't do that, it hurts the overall deal.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
You also show, in relation to the earlier question, you some kind of stall on the section, right? Some kind of stall on here.
Yeah, they're trying to show, because we would like to use outdoor space to have a weekend market, a
And they would
Christmas
be
market.
semi-permanent or totally impermanent structures?
In the winter, our goal is that they would be semi-permanent because they'll want heat in them, and then but that would only be in December and November.
Okay.
And then the rest of the time they'd be tents or food courts and that nature, like a traditional market.
So I think the other reason we were thinking about that cross-through street, not just on the neighborhood plan, but the first draft you proposed where it was kind of almost like a U-shaped outlining an area, even though it was talked about as if it's a public space, a gathering space, it definitely had the feel, and you can even see in the architectural renderings that it kind of says this is private space, it's not public space, it's not really a gathering. So the idea of the street, I mean, at a certain level, I don't care if it's a public street or a private street, as long as it's not marked private street.
No, it would never be marked.
Right, it would be, and then you'd have to plow it, not the city.
Right, it saves you a little money.
Yeah, so it got advantages too. For
Right,
the
it's
city.
got advantages.
Yep.
And I mean, I like the idea of closing off streets and having pop-up festivals. And
Are there utilities that go down that,
When?
this street? Would there be utilities of any sort going down?
Not likely, but,
Okay.
you know, our engineers are thrilled with the idea of it going all the way to Century, by the way, because of Flora and Armature. But we don't have the property owners okay anyway at
I
this
mean,
point.
because it's too close to
It's too close, they feel like. There's not a controlled intersection. But I don't think it would have utilities. I think Robin's project would be taking utilities, I think, from Lisa. I don't know if that's all.
Correct, yeah, that's our intent, yeah.
But so the engineers don't want it to go all the way through Century because you don't want
That's what
another
they've said. They don't want
intersection.
another- Right.
That makes
Century.
that makes sense.
It could be a right.
Except that the whole area is starting to become more urbanized.
Right.
And so, you know, so there's intersections. We know how to deal with intersections on a street.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood plan shows it as kind of trying to be more gridded, walkable, right?
Right.
But the engineers are locked in a world of access management where you have
Exactly.
everybody funneled to these arterials so that it's controlled access points. So we need to either we need to explain to the engineers what an urban gridded street network looks like.
The best arterial is one that has no access points.
We love our engineers, but we absolutely
They like the hierarchy of control.
I have a question about, you made a comment in here about the market, which is something we talked about last time. And that was, you said you'd be able to transform that into other retail space if the market concept is unsuccessful. So I would just like to have you talk a little bit about how you make that decision and how long of a trial you give it and all that kind of stuff. Because I think if we do this, we would like to make it successful. It's good to see that you would have a backup plan.
Yeah, we have an operating plan that allows us to run the market for 3 years at a loss. So if after 3 years, if after a year, we would probably start to consider re-squaring off the space for different uses. But we've gotten a ton of interest. I'm getting unsolicited phone calls by people who want to be in it, who saw the news story from our last meeting here, from reading the meeting minutes and the story in the Cap Times. So we have operating expense to do it 3 years. In a year and a half to 2, we would probably start to consider carving out smaller spaces for traditional retail, but that's our plan currently. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it's pre-leased before construction starts at the rate we've got
So,
interest.
as I recall, what you talked about last time was vendors coming and going. So what kind of lease agreements would you have?
We're looking at, for the real small spaces, allowing them a 6-month lease, and then the more substantial spaces that include storage space and cooking hoods and things of that nature requiring a year lease to start. We're doing more build out in this space than would be traditional, so it's easier for a vendor to move in, and it's easier for a food cart to become a permanent location.
I wanted to ask how wide the back-end stalls are.
Which one?
Well, the ones.
Oh, the back-end?
Vendor back-end stalls, yeah.
I have no idea.
Because I guess a standard is 9 feet. And I guess I know it's going to reduce the number, but it sort of seems to me it's comfortable to do this if it's something that's a little wider.
Yeah.
Plus, you're also going to have heavier, bigger vehicles.
Right.
doing this.
Yeah, there's many ways we could do that. We could do them all at 9 and squeeze them in there when need be. We could set aside vendor parking spots that are 10 or 12.
Would you be
wide.
kind to come over here to the mic?
Yeah, the
please?
microphone just for recording.
not used to people saying I'm quiet. So we could do it a couple different ways. You could have certain stalls allocated for vendors. So like maybe those stalls, there's 20 of them in there or something like that that are, or 15 or whatever that number is, just a 12-foot wide stall for that specific time that they're used. We could make them all 10 if that made sense at the time. I don't think we have gotten to that level of detail quite yet with the plan, but if that's something you want us to accommodate, that's something that we could definitely accommodate at this time.
Well, that just seems like it would be friendlier for the purpose that you want. And people will, I mean, if you give them 12, they'll be all over those places too. So
they'll park at 6.
I don't know.
So.
I know it's gonna. That'd be a problem. I just want to. I really like this plan. This is exactly what I had hoped to kind of see, and it doesn't make any difference to me whether there was parking on that road or not. I just like the fact that it goes through, and it does seem like a very comfortable, and the pass-throughs all mean that it's both open and welcome and closing at the same time. It's a very neat concept, I think.
Yeah.
Very good compromise.
To point out that with the public easement, if you ever did get the access down the road and that were to ever come up, that public easement is going to give you the ability to go back and kind of revamp this. I think this is a good solution where we actually allow the traffic to go through with it being a private road and having the development maintain it until the time where that connection could be made, not knowing if that's in 5 years or 50,
If we don't have any utilities, I don't see any need for us to have.
You have a question?
The outdoor market zone, is that something every day there would be an outdoor market there?
No. So, best case scenario, we'd be open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Worst case scenario, we're looking at Saturday, Sunday. So we'll probably start Saturday, Sunday and see how demand is to open up for multiple days. We've seen this in multiple cities where they expand their market outside if they have space. And so the same with the Christmas markets. The Christmas markets typically are open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And then the vendor would choose whether they wanted to be there. They could be there all days, one day.
Correct.
If they're uptown.
Right.
So how many stalls you're thinking of in this market?
What's your last count? You mean on the total site?
No,
For vendors.
in the market,
Oh.
yeah.
I would say that we want to have at least 15 pull-in stalls,
Okay.
15 to 20. So, and that they would be used on, I see them that they would be flex spaces. So we may not set them up. There may be Thursdays and Fridays aren't very busy and we use those as general parking. And then Saturdays and Sundays, because of access and more vendors, we use the vendor stalls on the weekends. So.
Okay, that's good.
So I guess more parking questions since we're seem to be the parking commission. Not the planning commission. These horizontal stalls on this private street, would those be metered? Would they be free? Would they be time limited?
I don't know the answer to time limited, but they'll definitely be free.
Okay. What would it do to the plan? I'm just thinking out loud here, and I'm not convinced that I'm correct, but if that street was only one way, you made it smaller, so it's just like a 10-foot cartway width to drive and pull in stalls going north so that you can get people coming from Parmenter through Lisa, go through, rather than, because if you have traffic coming from Middleton area, it's going to come down Parmenter Street.
Right.
Because they're not going to come down Century yet.
Yeah.
And you don't want to turn left across Century through Zimber, which we're not doing. But off the belt line, are people coming? Are they really coming down Century and Parmenter, or are they coming down Laura?
They come down
They come down Laura, and so would you want them to enter the site through Lisa, where you're kind of seeing the kind of grand entrance of the fountain, or slip in the back from Robin Lane? Or Eileen Lane. Eileen Lane.
Well, as long as there was good pedestrian access, which is one of the things I think we said, like to the area to the west that would be nearer, I think that would work.
I guess I don't feel like that's, that there's enough room there to back up if you make it one lane. I think that this kind of parking is more difficult for.
You've seen me park.
Well, it is. You know, you can't turn the car quite as tight a radius.
What about angle parking? Rather than parallel, just make an angle.
Yeah, and we're not against that either. I mean, it
It'd have to be a private street then, right?
right, then it's definitely have to be.
If you ask me for parking,
Why your engineers don't like angle parking?
we had it on Elmwood and they were
Not
not
real
real happy with it, but it works really well.
Yes, David.
I have to have my first disagreement with Kurt. I think one-way street would be a disaster. It's sort of saying we're not encouraging movement through the area.
Okay.
And I think what we are doing is saying that we want to have as much movement through that area as possible, which in turn will go in time, I'm sure will go up to Century Avenue, and we will get reasonably sized street blocks that one can walk around, you know, as opposed to this huge block which it is at the moment, only partially being reduced by having this. We haven't put an, I think you should, Robin Lane should be the one in the middle, not the back entrance. But you know, I think we want to make excitement activity on the street, and making it one way I think would deprive it of that.
Yes, anybody else? You guys want to say something, Mark or Abby? Okay.
I would simply note that the original block here is about 20 acres from Laura Lane to Parmenter, north to Century, south to Lisa. So even putting this street through would leave about a 5-acre lot or block.
I have a
Yes,
curiosity
Cindy.
question, given what we've been reading about UW and Meriter recently in their agreements. Have you heard any more about the development of that site?
Just, you know, as far as we know, it's still, you know, they're still planning on building it. You know, it's a little bit delayed because of that partnership. But, you know, if you look at this site, they have 13 acres. It's off the belt line. It's visible from the belt line, right turn off of it. It's entitled, it's cleared, it's got both the zoning and TIF. I think it's a matter of time before they are building, probably.
Today I read in the paper about how they built some competing facilities right across the street from each other.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like they have a surplus, or will have a surplus of facilities for a while.
And they may, but I also know from going to UW Health that they are bursting the seams at a lot of their clinics, you know.
Meriter not so much, though, it said in the paper.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Cindy, to answer your question, we are setting up a meeting with them. So, but it's, we haven't worked out the details yet. So I'm sure they want to meet with the city, and we want to meet with them too. So I think for this project to go forward and succeed, we have to know their intentions.
Okay, good.
But we will do that, you know, as soon as they're available. Yes, David.
Can I commend the architects on the illustrations of the architecture that we've got here? Many of my colleagues around this table will have heard me going on like crazy about buildings that go up 3 stories, 4 stories, get cut off, and boy, we're going to articulate the buildings by having a 6-inch difference in the roof. You know, I think you've suggested in this that there is some articulation of buildings, especially at the skyline.
Yep.
And I would encourage the development of that as you go forward with this. It's a vast improvement over many of the housing developments that we've seen. Having said that, my sense is that we are behind this scheme, and that the scheme that we have in front of us to make a decision about is wrong. So can we sort of say, yes, we approve this scheme in concept and would look forward to receiving a full application package at a future meeting?
That's a good way to say it. I'm sorry I didn't write it down when you said it.
Yeah. And I'll make that as a motion.
Wow. And we need a second to that now.
I'll second it. Okay, and I have a question. When you're saying this plan, are you saying with the building extended, they're going to have to do stormwater studies anyway, but I would prefer to see that extended as it is on this picture.
I like it extended as well, and it gives you more apartments. You know, I mean, and so it's a balance between that and needing the water.
And it also needs road in the center there too. That doesn't include that.
What we're really doing now is just approving the
Yes.
concept.
We're giving
Yes.
concept
Yes.
approval
Yes.
to the site plan and the Vanderwall drawing.
Right.
Yeah.
Good
With the
idea.
existing,
Yes.
with the extended building.
Headed in that
And
direction.
pedestrian pass-through, not a vehicle pass-through for both of them, or?
Yes.
Vehicle for the one going to the parking lot, I would say.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can we leave it till the next discussion?
And have maybe them submit something and talk to
I
them.
mean, you're talking about having a pedestrian pass-through in there?
I think what our consultant showed was a vehicle pass-through on the westernmost one and pedestrian on
Oh,
the
right,
eastern.
okay.
And I think what Rob is saying, she preferred pedestrian for both.
Okay.
I would personally like the vehicular drive-through, because if I'm driving to one and there's not enough parking spaces, there's
Right.
only, what, 10, perhaps 12 parking spaces on the east side of the building. There's a lot of parking spaces on the back of the building. I can drive through and get there.
Sure.
So David, what you're really saying is approve this in concept for them to bring back the detailed plan. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yep.
And we appreciate.
Is that what everybody agrees here? So,
Yeah, except I agree of keeping it just a pedestrian walkthrough, not. I don't like vehicular pass through buildings.
For both of them, or just one of them?
On both, just pedestrian.
Oh.
So they could propose what they think is best and then bring it for those two issues, extension of the building and pedestrian or vehicular pass-through, and then bring it back and you guys would discuss that as part of the overall concept plan. Our overall site plan is proposed and architecture and all of that. And also, I just want to say we appreciate as staff going through the kind of iterative process that we did, you know, kind of putting on paper what we were looking for, what we thought maybe the planning commission was and the city council. And so just appreciate your willingness to, you know, to move forward with that. Thank you.
Okay, so
Before anybody quits here, I'm 1 and 1 for this, for the pedestrian versus.
You're one.
I just want you to know there is support for that.
okay, so we did have a second to Kurt. Did you second the who moved?
I think that's Cindy.
Okay, Cindy did. Okay, so well now we open for discussion.
Are most of the below grade parking stalls are for the tenants of the apartments?
Correct. We're at, I think, 3 stalls over what we have for units, which is staff. And
So the surface parking is primarily for the visitors and the.
right, and additional.
And employees and-
apartment, you know,
Yeah,
some
visitors.
Have 2 cars, some have none, so.
We have a world famous apartment parking expert sitting in the green room.
Matter, or is that clear? Why aren't they being held to the same rules and standards? Where's the parking study? Where's the traffic study?
Because they're providing all the parking that's required. It's not a shared parking situation.
They've got commercial space, just like we.
Yeah, they're actually providing more parking. We actually would like them to have maybe fewer. So, in this case, but that's the next thing which we talk about. So,
But we deal with that at the GI.
yes,
Right.
and also
Concept approval.
yes, yes. Any more questions, guys?
Yes, I do have.
Yes, Dennis.
I'm a little toss up here between the dog park and stormwater locations.
We're actually thinking about flip-flopping those already.
Excellent idea. Okay.
Yeah.
No questions anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually talk about having pockets of stormwater management done sporadically around the perimeter and inside because of the high water table and everything that we're dealing with, there's not going to be enough grade to get things around the building that we need to get around corners and everything else. So that is a huge challenge that is still, you know, lingering out there as far as everything that we have to do yet.
So, what is the water table there?
It's 3.5 at the far left-hand side of the site where the retail's showing.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's 6.8
Hmm.
at the market side.
Boy.
So
That is pretty.
That's a bathtub and a continuous pump,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
yeah, the parking underground will be a very big challenge. I
Well-
did it once on the isthmus though, and it's probably just as bad as what we had there, so.
Any more questions for Robin or the architect? Okay, if there are no more questions, I call the question for the approval of this concept for them to bring back a detailed proposal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so,
You have to admit, our process is less cumbersome than the public market in another nearby city.
We should be open before that.
Before they even get to, like-
Yeah, that's my goal at least.
okay, well,
Thank
well,
you.
I won't go far, because I
the
think
main
we'll
thing is we
probably
have to
go
make it successful, so that's pretty important, so. Okay, so the next one is,
Request for TIF.
request for tax incremental financing District 5, TIP 5 assistance, Trista mixed use development including Middleton Market, 7622 Lisa Lane.
And it, can we talk about it, or just
Yes,
start talking
yes,
about it?
we are-
Well, you know, it is a large request, but it is proposing returning 25% of it from day one when it starts generating increment to the TIF district, which is something that I feel strongly about, that some it comes back to the TIF. I think it's 8.7 million.
Correct.
Plus interest. It's developer financed, so only what's generated would be, only 75% of what's generated would be returned. And our staff, just because of vacations and holidays, really are still reviewing it, but, you know, it does seem to pay back within the allocated time, and 25% going to the overall tip. It's just more to find out what you all feel about it.
What's the overall project cost? About?
45 million.
And do we have, has the assessor given us a rough estimate of the likely assessed value?
41 to 44 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the current assessed value is a little lower as softball fields. So,
Yeah. There's not much base value.
Yeah, it delivers about $950,000 a year in tax revenue. Is what-
an increment.
Yeah. Which scares me every time I say that, actually.
That's going to be one of your biggest costs.
I know, right?
So, yeah.
So, any more questions here or discussion? Well, I had three things for Eileen. The soil remediation, that's $2.1 million. So I want the staff to really look at it if it could be any less. And the second is underground parking. Do we really need that much parking? It's 7.9 million. So if we don't need that much parking, so it probably will be less cost. So we should look at that as well. And the last one is green roof. So I don't know if you can handle the water other way if we need green roof there. So that's $960,000. So we have a other example of Market West, which also used the TIF, and it was much less money than this one. But at least I like the staff to look at these three things. So, any other questions you guys have here now?
Could you explore, at least run some numbers of what it would be like to put, because at least as these roofs are articulated, as David was talking about, a large number of solar panels could fit on those. I think the site orientation could handle some of those. I mean, we look for some sustainability features in the TIF.
Right, so right now we're asking for stormwater, purple pipe, and the living roof.
Yeah.
And we're happy to switch one of those two out to a solar activity in lieu of one of those two. In fact, stormwater's our hardest one, so to switch to solar instead of purple pipe, although Abby will be
Yeah.
disappointed.
So you're not super excited about the purple pipe?
Not super excited about the purple pipe, no, I have to admit, that's true. And HUD is our, hopefully our lender, we're already in process with them, and they actually asked the exact same question and had some real interest in exploring solar on the roof in lieu of the stormwater.
But if you don't do the purple pipe, you'd need more stormwater facilities on the site.
Not necessarily. The purple pipe, the difficulty part of purple pipe is the reuse and reusing of it and getting it to locations that it can be reused and has to be treated so it doesn't have smell or those types of issues. There's actually less, there's more total stormwater, but it's less difficult to deal with than the purple pipe stormwater use on site. And I don't have to deal with making sure those fountains stay 100% full, and since we're not doing ice skating rink and things like that.
Well, we want to make Abby happy, so.
I know.
I was upset when they took the public art out.
I just said we weren't going to ask for the money for the public art.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's, I like
yeah.
that then.
So this item is more for direction to the staff and to Robin and her group here. So they will keep working on this to fine tune, considering some of the comments.
Is this about in line with the percent of the increment that goes to the TID as opposed to the developer finance loan relative to Market West?
Market
Any
West was less in terms of their request. I'm not sure that we had any return to TID 3 because TID 3's financial situation is a lot better.
Because that was TID 3, this is TID 5.
We've asked more for TID 5 that to be the norm, that we get some back because we need to do public improvements and we don't have. We've created increment or new development, new tax base of like over $20 million, but because of the expenses, we're going to have cash position in 5, so.
Market West was about $8 million in assistance.
7.9.
I thought it was like 7.9.
7.9.
I guess that's close to 8.
About 8.
Yeah, it's,
And it was 240 units on a greenfield site, and it did incorporate 23 affordable housing units.
About 10%.
But it has a huge solar project.
oh, it does?
And
Yeah.
that's part of
Yeah.
it, yeah.
About
So that-
500 kilowatts
That's why I
of
asked.
solar.
So that's included in the tip? Okay.
Yeah.
Which HUD loan is this?
The 420D.
420D.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why staff and you should get together and see, work out more details, so. Okay, so any more questions? So then you got enough of input, the staff, you got input to work, go from here. Okay, so then I need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so we are adjourned. Thank you.